welcome back to Goodbye Grains. Today we are making lamb Kleftiko. Now this is a pretty famous Greek recipe, I believe. When my husband and I were in Greece, the server at one of the restaurants that we went to recommended this to us, and I had never heard of it before, and after I ate it, it was really, really tasty. And I kind of asked her a little bit of kind of the ingredients that went into it and how they made it, and so this is kind of my version of it. This is a great recipe to kind of make when you're busy, just because you kind of throw everything together, put it in the oven, and it's good to go. So obviously you're going to have some lamb now. Definitely buy some bone-in grass-fed or like naturally raised lamb. So this is about a pound. This is the amount that my husband and I eat. We'll probably have a little bit of leftovers, but obviously you have the bone and stuff that's part of that weight. Now for the vegetables kind of that are in it, we have some carrots and some Roma tomatoes, and then an onion for some flavor. We have some garlic, and then I love rosemary on any type of lamb. It smells really, really good. And then a little bit of dried oregano. If you have fresh oregano, you can certainly use that too. And then we have some cracked black pepper and some kosher salt. And then we're also going to be using kind of just some olive oil to drizzle over the lamb. And now the biggest thing that you definitely need is parchment paper. So I don't usually cook with parchment paper. This is one of the only recipes I make with parchment paper, but what you're going to do is all of the contents of this recipe are going to be wrapped in parchment paper, and that's kind of what seals in all the juices and allows the meat to really cook and get really, really tender. So first thing we need to do is chop up the vegetables. Alright, so we have our peeled carrots, a yellow onion. We're going to slice this pretty thin. Now, you don't have to use the whole onion. You can use a little over half of it since I'm only making a portion for 2 people. And then we have a couple of the Roma tomatoes that we're also going to slice. And then for the garlic, all we're actually going to do is crush it, because we definitely want the garlic flavor, but we don't want it so overpowering that you don't get, you know, the rosemary and some of the other natural flavors of the lamb. So and kind of move these off to the side. For the carrots, we're actually going to cut these in fairly large chunks, and the reason for that is that it's going to be in the oven for a decent amount of time because we want the lamb to get really, really tender. So I'll actually cut these 2 carrots first since they're closer in size, but you basically want them to be about this size. If you have really, really thick carrots, like towards the end side, you could probably just cut these in half. Lengthwise. Okay, so now that we have all of our kind of like vegetables and you know, spices and seasoning type stuff ready, we can put everything together. So I usually grab a really big piece of parchment paper, and the reason for that is because you would much rather grab a little bit more than you want than grab not enough. So also you want to grab out a pan, one that's going to fit the amount of lamb that you have. So since I don't have a ton, I have a smaller dish, but if you're using probably double the amount of lamb, you probably want a slightly bigger baking dish. And the reason for that is because a little bit of the juice and the kind of liquid that is going to come from cooking the lamb and from the vegetables and stuff will seep out a little bit, and you don't want it to get all over your oven. So you can lay this sort of down. I'm gonna put it here, and then I'll add it to the dish after. So you want your lamb to go on the bottom, and so we can take our pieces and just kind of lay them together. And you kind of want it to be uniform so that it's all kind of in a block so that you can easily wrap this. And then you can drizzle with about a tablespoon or two of olive oil. And then let me go wash my hands so that I can add the spices. All right, so I moved, swapped these a little bit so you can see a little easier, but we're going to add our pepper. Now you just want a couple rounds of this. You don't want to go crazy on the pepper. Salt, on the other hand, you probably want to add at least about a teaspoon or so of kosher salt for this amount. And the reason for that is this is the only salt going in the entire dish, and kosher salt, as I've said before, if you're using sea salt, you want to cut that amount in half. And then we're just going to do a small sprinkle of oregano, less than a half teaspoon, just because oregano is definitely a really powerful flavor. Now we can add our rosemary, and what I usually do, I'll leave it on the stalk, but I'll kind of like just break it in into pieces if I can. And then in order to, I mean, rosemary is pretty potent, so it's already going to give off all of its flavor and stuff, but someone taught me that if you just kind of smack them, any of the herbs that you're using, it starts to release the oils, so I usually do that. And just kind of put that on top, and then throw on your garlic. And then at this point you can kind of put whichever next. It doesn't really matter whether you put the onions or the tomato or the carrots next. You can just kind of stack everything. You want it to kind of be compressed though, if you can. And then worst case too, you can always just kind of lift up your lamb and put a couple pieces underneath of the carrots and the tomato. You just kind of want to have everything in there. So kind of just layer it around. One more piece of tomato. And then you can just do another drizzle or two of olive oil right over the top for the vegetables. You don't need to add much, a teaspoon or two. And then now comes the part where you have to fold it and kind of move things around to make sure that it's going to actually close. So I usually try to do as best I can to get it into a main kind of solid block, and then fold. Now you want to make sure that it folds over the top like this, and then you can kind of roll in the sides. Now this is a lot easier if you have a second person because they can hold this while you're rolling, because by rolling the sides in you're going to keep this better closed. But I will try to do it by myself. And then now you can grab a second piece that you're going to put over, wrap the other way to kind of keep this piece closed and covered. So now at this point, we can grab our baking pan. You can just lay this right in here. And by using one that's kind of pretty close to the size of your kind of packet, it helps kind of keep it intact. So we are going to cook this in a 400 degree preheated oven for about an hour and a half, maybe even a little longer. It really depends on how big your lamb shoulder chops are when you first are kind of building everything. If they're really big, you want to cut them down to these slightly smaller pieces just because it would take quite a bit longer to cook. But we can kind of put this off to the side until our oven is preheated, and then it's ready to pop in. Okay, so I just pulled this out of the oven. It was in there for a little over an hour and a half. And now definitely use a pot holder if you need to, because this is definitely hot and all the steam that's trapped in here is very hot. So you can kind of pull this back a little bit. And then what you can do is actually just use a knife and cut through the paper. And then you can kind of just start pulling this back. And as you can see, all of the vegetables are all the way cooked through, the carrots are all the way cooked through, and the lamb, let's see if you can see this, the lamb is incredibly tender. You can, I mean, you don't even need to poke it with a knife and it's already starting to come off the bone. And then all of that good flavor and juice, let me grab another pot holder. So you can see this. All of that good flavor and juice is just sitting at the bottom. So you can take all of the meat out and put it onto a plate and serve the sauce over the top, or you can bring it to the table straight like this. It's kind of a cool, you know, thing to talk about, the fact that you cooked it in parchment paper, and it is really easy cleanup. So definitely give this recipe a shot. It's actually perfect also for company. Just because you kind of can prep everything, get everything ready in the morning or, you know, a little bit before your guests arrive, and then you just pop it into the oven and you kind of just let it go. You don't have to worry about, you know, standing over the stove when you want to be, you know, hanging out with your friends and your family. So I will see you guys next week. Bye.